I'm Harper, an ordinary girl with an unusual dream to build my own company. Before, I never thought I could achieve that, but then I did it. I started from scratch, building it myself step by step. And now I stand at the pinnacle of my career, preparing to marry Alex, who I think will be my companion for life. But one day, everything I believed in collapsed. The story begins on an afternoon like any other afternoon. Alex texted me to say he couldn't have dinner with me because of an urgent meeting with a client. I understand his work is very important, but I feel like something is wrong. I looked at my phone, scrolled through Instagram, and then I saw something that made my heart stop. A photo of Alex standing on a rooftop bar holding a blonde girl. I couldn't believe my eyes. I drove to Alex's apartment without thinking much, just in one go, as if something was urging me. When I arrived, he was sitting on the sofa, looking a bit worried when he saw me. I didn't say anything right away, just took the engagement ring off my hand and firmly placed it on the table. Alex looked shocked, but he quickly stood up and said, "Harper, you heard wrong. It's not what you think. I can explain. I don't want to hear explanations." At that time, I only saw one thing: betrayal. I've devoted my whole life to him, to this love, yet he treats me like that. He said it was nothing serious, that the girl was just an old friend he met at work. But how can I trust you anymore? Surely I can't. Those words were like a slap in my face. I have heard too many empty promises. I let out a cold sentence. "Stop talking, Alex. I don't want to hear anything else." Then I left, not looking back at him again. The engagement ring lay on the table, evoking a past I no longer wanted to remember. At that time, I didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted to leave everything related to Alex and this painful feeling. I drove outside the city, went to a familiar coffee shop, sat there and tried to gather everything. As if I didn't, I would collapse on the spot. When I got home, another shock hit me. My family, who I always thought would understand and be on my side, had a completely opposite reaction. My mother, always my protector, turned to blame me. "Harper, you can't do that. You can't simply leave because of an argument with Alex. He could help your father's company." I stood there stunned, not understanding what I was hearing. I just need a word of comfort, a word to say that I deserve to be happy, that I deserve a life without betrayal. But instead, they only worry about money, about the benefits that Alex can bring. Even my father said, "You can't give up halfway like that. Alex is a potential partner of the company. We could lose everything if you do that." My brother Adam was silent, but his eyes looked at me as if I was doing something wrong. I felt like an outsider in my own family. They weren't worried about me. They weren't worried that I was going to be devastated by betrayal. They were just worried that my father's company would face difficulties. Alex is part of the company's growth plan. And me? I'm just a tool, part of the family, nothing more, nothing less. In their eyes, I am not a daughter or a sister, but just a part of the business machine. I sat down on the sofa, my eyes stinging with anger and frustration. After a moment of silence, I stood up, deciding that I was going to do something life-changing. No longer wanting to live in the shadow of family, no longer wanting to be bound by expectations that can never be met. I need to stand up and take control of my life, even if it means starting from scratch. That decision came unexpectedly, but decisively. I can't continue living under their control anymore. I need to find myself again, find what I lost. And the only way is to leave. I'm going to sell my company, walk away from everything that was once mine, and start over. No Alex, no family, no expectations. It's just me and a new path that I will draw for myself. The next day, I contacted a broker and decided to sell my company. I didn't think much about its value or what I would lose. I just wanted to escape the shadow of the past. I don't need my family's protection anymore, and I don't need Alex, who betrayed me the moment I put my trust in him. I've had enough. I don't know where I will go or what I will do, but I know one thing for sure. I need to stand up for myself and live this life in my own way, and that is the beginning of a new journey. A week after I decided to sell the company and cut all ties with my family, I sat in my small apartment in Boston, looking out the window at the afternoon sunlight shining on the tall buildings. Everything was peaceful. But not the peace I had dreamed of. This is the peace of solitude, of someone who is finding himself in a new world, no more critics, no more people who love me just for their own sake. Since I left New York, everything has changed. I no longer have to worry about stressful meetings or the company, no longer have to face expectations from my family. I had only myself and a sense of freedom I had never felt before. But freedom doesn't mean it's easy. I didn't know what I was going to do next. I didn't know if the decision to sell the company was right or not, but I knew I couldn't go back. Less than a month later, I received a job offer from Caden, an investor I had heard about for a long time. He is a very famous person in the venture capital industry, notable for his ability to spot potential opportunities that others do not see. But the first time I met him, I didn't feel anything special. Caden isn't like other people I've met in this industry. He's not flashy, doesn't seem overly confident, and overall, there's nothing that makes me think he'll have any major impact on my life. However, I was wrong. As I began working with him, I gradually realized Caden's sensitivity and insight. He is not only a talented investor, but also a very patient and knowledgeable person. We discussed a wide range of issues, from investment strategies to how to build lasting business relationships. Under his guidance, I began to learn a lot about the world that I had never really delved into. It is a competitive industry, but at the same time, full of opportunities for those who know how to grasp it. One day, during a meeting between investors, I met Simone, a young female founder with a potential technology project. Her project could change the way we approach healthcare, but lacks the resources and support to develop it. As soon as I heard Simone talk about her vision and passion, I felt something deep inside. This was the opportunity I was looking for. Simone is not the type of person to give up easily. She is strong, determined, and passionate about her company. But most importantly, she sees work not only as an opportunity to make money, but also as a way to change the world. That's something I can't help but support. I decided to invest in Simone, not only because of her project, but also because of my belief in her. It was a big decision because it was not easy for me to trust someone, especially when I had just left a company and a life that I had built for many years. But this time I feel that this is the right thing, and I began participating in Simone's project, helping her expand the company and come up with long-term development strategies. My life in Boston gradually stabilized. But although this new job brings me many opportunities, I cannot completely separate myself from my past. My family never stopped contacting me, especially after my father was hospitalized for a mild heart attack. They told me I needed to go back to help the family company, that if I didn't help, everything would collapse. One evening, after receiving a call from my mother, I felt a sudden sense of guilt. I can't help but worry about my father, but I also can't go back to what made me miserable. They don't understand me. They only see me as a tool to make money for the family. I couldn't leave everything I was building behind here, couldn't let their expectations pull me back. I sat there for a long time, looking at my phone screen with messages from my family. Part of me wanted to go back, wanted to help, but the other part of me told me that I was enough. I did everything I could for them, but in the end, they didn't stand by me when I needed it most. Why do I go back and keep doing that? I decided not to answer them anymore. Not because I don't love them, but because I love myself more. I have spent so much time and effort building a life that I now realize is no longer right for me. I can't keep living under the pressure of my family and those unreasonable expectations. Instead of looking to the past, I started looking to the future. I no longer need to worry about losing my family's love. My family's love is not something I can find in calls or texts. I can only find it within myself, and so I continue to invest in women-founded companies, focusing on initiatives that can deliver real change. I no longer let my family or Alex influence my decisions. I understand that freedom and independence come not only from leaving unhealthy relationships, but also from knowing how to choose the path you want to take, regardless of external obstacles. And that's when I realized that my life now belonged to me, and I wasn't going to let anyone or anything stop me from finding myself. One day, when Simone's company was starting to achieve significant success, I received news from one of my old friends, my sister Elizabeth. She sent me a short text. "Mom wants to see you. Dad's out of the hospital. We need to talk." I read the message, feeling a little tight, but then I quickly regained my composure. My sister has always been the gentle person in the family, always trying to keep our relationship from being damaged too much. But I know, this only makes my headache worse. Everything was so clear. My family never understood me, never really cared about my feelings, just expectations, invisible pressures, psychological blows that made me always feel like I couldn't escape. However, I knew clearly that I needed to face them again, not to find forgiveness, but to finish what was left unfinished. When I returned to New York, it felt strange. The city is still vibrant, but now I no longer feel part of it. Everything seemed to be slowing down, only I had no place to stand. I went to my parents' house, the large mansion that I once considered my home. When I walked through the gate, a wave of emotions welled up in my heart, but I tried to suppress it. I cannot let weakness get me down. I am a strong person, and I have decided not to go back to my old ways. The whole family is gathering in the living room. My father, despite having just recovered from his illness, looked tired but still sat stoically, while my mother and my brother Peter maintained their usual demeanor, as if everything was fine. When I walked in, their eyes all stopped on me. Not worry, but a waiting silence, an exploration of what I would do. "Tabitha, you're here," my mother said, her voice gentle but full of meaning. I just nodded without saying anything. It feels like I'm back in a space that doesn't belong to me, where everything has a price. I didn't come back because I wanted to fix something. I came here just to end everything, to no longer be bound by expectations or pressure. My father was the first to speak after a moment of silence. "Can you help us? Things are in trouble. Your mother is very worried about the company, and if you can go back and help, we can resolve the situation." His words made me feel suffocated, not because I don't want to help my father, but because I know clearly that to him I am just a tool to make money, a financial salvation. No one in my family really cares about how I feel. They don't care how I live, they only care about the benefits I can bring. "I can't go back, Dad," I said in a calm voice, but deep inside I felt a bit of pain. "You are no longer part of this family. I have my own life, and I want to continue on my path." My mother began to speak, her voice filled with worry and a little anger. "Do you know what you are doing? We did everything for you. We helped you build your company, and now you abandon it all because of a few wrong love decisions?" I felt like I was defeated by my mother's words, but I didn't let that sway me. I have lived in their shadow for too long. I can't keep bowing my head and living up to their expectations anymore. "No, Mom," I answered, my voice becoming firmer. "I built my company with my own strength and intelligence. I don't do it for anyone but myself, and I can't continue living because of expectations that were never mine." Peter, my older brother, also spoke up at this time, looking a bit annoyed. "So, you're saying that family isn't important? We have always been by your side, helping you. I can't just leave like that." Peter's words did not move me. I understand that he also only looks at the problem from the perspective of benefits. For them, I have always been a part of the tool that helps them maintain a comfortable life, but I am no longer the person of that past. I have changed, and I don't need to explain further. It's not that family isn't important, but I can't continue to live in my family's shadow anymore. You need to live for yourself, find your own freedom and happiness, and I have no explanation for what happened. The atmosphere became tense, but I felt a sense of relief in my heart. Finally, I was able to say what I had been suppressing for so long. I no longer have to live with that unfair sacrifice. My father looked at me for a long time, then finally he spoke, his voice hoarse. "So where are you going? We've built things from scratch too many times, you know that too." I quietly stood up, looked into his eyes and said, "I will follow my path. I have found a new path, and I will not turn back." And as I turned away, leaving those faces behind, I felt a freedom I had never felt before. Finally, I was in control of my life, no longer bound by what others wanted me to do. That was the final decision I made, and it was also a declaration. I will live for myself, not for anyone else. When I stepped outside, the afternoon sunlight shone through the trees, and I felt like I was born again. The road ahead is still long, but at least I'm ready to walk without fear anymore. Time passed quickly. After leaving home, I continued my new life in Boston, where I began collaborating with Caden, who helped me not only rebuild my life, but also open up a new and promising direction in the investment field. Caden is an investor with vision and patience, with whom I have found a similar mindset. He is not only a partner, but also a friend, who helped me reflect on myself and instilled in me confidence in the future. I gradually became an active investor, specializing in supporting companies founded by women, especially projects with the potential to change the industry. One of the best decisions I made was investing in Simone, the founder of a technology company in the healthcare industry. Her project surpassed all expectations, not only financially but also socially. I felt proud of what we had accomplished, but it wasn't long before the past came back. One evening, while I was attending an investment conference, I unexpectedly met Miles again. He stood there with a familiar smile, his eyes still shining with the complacency I had seen when we were still in love. The feeling of seeing him made me confused, as if time had suddenly turned back. But at the same time, it also made me realize one thing clearly. I was no longer the weak girl I used to be. He can no longer influence me like before. Miles approached, smiling, but looking a bit tense. "Tabitha, I hear you're doing well," he began, trying to lighten the mood. I'm not in a hurry to answer right away. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave everything behind, but another part wanted to face him one last time. Anyway, I can't run away forever. We used to have a life, but now, everything is different. "Thank you," I replied, my voice calm. "You're not so bad at making my family think I can't live without you." Miles smiled, but the smile seemed forced. "Tabitha, I don't think you understand. Things weren't as you thought. I don't want to hurt you. Things were out of my control." I stared at him, a feeling of anger rising in my heart. These words sounded sincere, but I knew all too well about his lies. What he did not only betrayed me, but also betrayed the trust and affection I had for him. My mind felt like it was bursting, but I maintained my composure and didn't let my emotions control me. "You had a chance to explain, Miles," I said softly but firmly. "But at that time, I didn't want to listen. And now, I don't need it anymore. Apologies cannot change anything." He stood there, silent for a long moment. I could see the disappointment in his eyes, but I didn't feel any remorse. Facing him again is not to seek forgiveness, but to affirm that I no longer need him, and I don't need to apologize for leaving. "Tabitha, I know I was wrong," he said, his voice sounding tired. "But if you help your family again, I believe everything will be like before." I shook my head. "I don't owe my family or you anything anymore. It's time for me to live for myself." Miles looked at me for a long moment, then finally he nodded, as if he had accepted the truth. "If that's your decision, I respect it," he said, then turned and walked away. Watching his figure disappear into the crowd, I felt a strange sense of relief. No more pain, no more hatred, only a deep peace in my heart. Everything is over. The memories of Miles, of my family, of the tears and brokenness, all are just the past. And now I am ready for a new chapter in my life. The next day, when I returned to the office, Caden was waiting for me with a mischievous smile. What happened yesterday? You seem like a huge burden has been lifted." I smiled softly and nodded. "That may be so. I am no longer entangled by the past. Now, I just think about the future and what I can do to change the world." Caden smiled, his eyes lighting up. "Well then, let's start planning the next step. Upcoming projects will be much bigger." I nodded, feeling new energy surge through me. That's right, I'm not looking back anymore. I have a new vision, and I won't let anyone or anything stop me from moving forward. In the following days, I spent most of my time focusing on growing my investments, especially in companies founded by women. Simone continues to go from strength to strength, and I feel proud to see her slowly rise to become one of the prominent names in the healthcare industry. Her company is not only financially successful, but also creates groundbreaking products that help improve the quality of life of many people. Every time I see her, I remember why I started investing in such projects, not just for money or fame, but because I want to create a world where women can stand strong and assert themselves in fields where they are often overlooked. I want to be the person who helps them build strong companies, not only financially but also in terms of core values. I was once a confused, scared girl, standing in the shadow of others. But now, I have become a strong, confident person who knows what I am doing. And no matter how hard my family or Miles might try to lure me back, I knew I had gone too far, not just geographically but internally. What I seek is not forgiveness, but freedom and self-respect. And I found all of that within myself. Although I was determined to cut all ties with my family and start a new life, sometimes the calls from the past resounded. The calls, the texts from my mother, from my brother, and sometimes from my father, they never gave up. The reproaches, pleading, and sometimes threats were all aimed at getting me to come back, to help my family like I had done before. But this time, I couldn't let these words affect me. I'm so used to hearing extremely annoying questions. Can't you help your parents? Your siblings are in trouble? Don't you feel responsible? Have you forgotten everything your parents have done for you? But I have learned one important thing during this time. Responsibility to my family does not mean sacrificing myself, nor does it mean having to live in the shadow of people who never truly understand and respect my true self. One morning, as I was preparing for an important meeting with a group of investors, I received an uninvited call from my mother. This time, her voice didn't seem to call me home like usual. Instead, she spoke urgently, but with anger. "Tabitha, your father has been hospitalized with a heart attack. It's not too serious, but you can't just leave like that. I don't know what you're doing in Boston, but the family is having a lot of problems that you're the only one who can solve." At first, I just felt a little worried, but then anger and frustration rose again. I clearly recall the image of my father, who never really cared about my feelings, always putting his own and the company's interests above everything. I'm so used to having to live up to their expectations. And now, even though they may be having difficulties, I'm no longer the person who will run to them when they call me. That has changed. However, I cannot deny that the story about my father made me feel a bit awkward. I felt a little guilty, but I also knew that I couldn't go back to my old life, where I was always the one being manipulated. The reality is, I've spent years building an independent life, and I can't let it all fall apart because of guilt towards my family. Finally, I decided to return to visit my father, but not to build a relationship or apologize. I no longer want to live in their shadow. I just want to be clear about everything once again, to wrap up what's left unfinished. When I walked into the hospital and saw my father lying there, I didn't feel pain or fear. Instead, a cold feeling enveloped me. This story will end, whether we like it or not. My father is lying in a hospital bed. His hair is gray. His face is much older than the last time I saw him. He looked at me when I entered the room. His eyes no longer had the hatred like before, but there was still fatigue, as if he was too used to the stresses of life. My mother sat in the chair next to me, her eyes clearly filled with worry, but I don't feel like I have to apologize or regret. Everything has changed. "Is there anything I can do to help Dad?" my mother asked, her voice a bit choked, but I knew she was clearly worried about the breakdown in the family. I didn't answer right away. I looked at my father, feeling no longer sad, but just emptiness. Finally, I spoke up. "Dad, it's not my fault for leaving. You have lived an independent life, and your decision was right. I can't come back just because Dad is sick. If you needed financial help, I would have done my best. I cannot continue to endure unreasonable pressure from my family." My father was silent for a moment, his eyes a bit distant, but then he looked at me with a strange understanding. "You have changed," he said, his voice low but sounding like he had realized something. "I can't force you to do anything you're not right, but I hope you can understand one thing. Things are not always as simple as you think." I don't know how to feel about those words. Although I don't want to forgive him and his family for their mistakes, in my heart I feel a little something, not sympathy, but a cold truth. It's all too late. "I understand," I said softly but firmly. "But I chose my own path. I can't live up to your expectations anymore." My mother looked at me sadly, but I didn't feel any regret. When I turned around and walked out of the hospital room, I didn't feel as heavy as before. Everything is clear now. My family will never change, and I will never go back to save them. My change isn't about giving up, it's about being free. The next day, I returned to Boston. I have an important meeting with the investor group about Simone's new project. The project is developing very well, and I believe this is a great opportunity to build a future not only for me, but also for other women. Projects like this, big goals, are exactly what I need right now. On the flight back, I sat thinking about what had just happened. My family may never understand, but I no longer need their approval or validation. They chose their way of life, and I chose my own path. A path without inhibitions, without dependence, a path for me to be free to live my own way. I don't need to go back. What I can do is continue on the path I have chosen, with faith in myself and those who accompany me. Time passed quickly. Busy days with investments and new projects have left me with no time to think about the past. The decisions I made, from leaving my family to ending my relationship with Miles, are no longer things that weigh me down. I have created for myself a future that I feel proud of, a future where I don't have to live in someone else's shadow, but for myself. During those days, Simone's project flourished. She has surpassed all expectations and become a prominent figure in the healthcare technology industry. That's what makes me feel very happy, because I've seen the change not only in myself, but also in the people I've helped. I became a part of her journey, and when I saw Simone's success, I felt a deep sense of joy. One of the days I attended an awards event for investors and founders, where Simone stood on stage accepting an award for her project. She looked at me from under the stage, smiling appreciatively and gratefully. I couldn't help but feel proud of myself. These are the moments I need. The recognition is not from my family, but from people who truly understand and appreciate what I do. After the event, Simone and I sat and chatted for a while. "Tabitha, I know I couldn't do this without you," she said. "You are the one who trusted me when I had nothing. I will never forget that." I smiled, feeling the sincerity in her words. "I just believe in you," I replied, "and I believe in your potential. We go a long way together." Simone's success is not only her own achievement, but also a testament to my belief in visionaries. That's why I continue to seek out and invest in companies founded by women. They may not have the recognition elsewhere, but I know that they can change an industry, just like Simone did. However, in those happy moments, I cannot avoid thinking about my family. Even though I was determined to leave and start again, part of me couldn't help but feel like something was unfinished. Maybe that's why I started thinking more about my sister, Elizabeth. She was always the person I felt closest to in the family, even though we never really had a perfect relationship. Every time I think about her, I can't help but feel like I want her to live freely and not be controlled by her family like I used to. One day, while I was walking around the neighborhood in Boston, I ran into Elizabeth again. She was walking alone, her mind full of thoughts as usual. She saw me from afar and came closer. "Sister, what are you doing here?" Elizabeth asked, her voice sounding surprised but also full of warmth. I smiled slightly. "I'm just going for a walk. How are you? I heard you're starting a small business project?" Elizabeth nodded, her eyes lighting up. "Yes, I'm trying out a new idea about sustainable fashion. I've started building a website and am looking for investment capital." I looked at her, feeling the determination and enthusiasm in her eyes. That makes me feel a little proud. "I knew you could do it," I said. "You have talent, and you deserve a chance." She looked at me, her eyes full of surprise and gratitude. I didn't think you would support me like that. I've been through hardships and know that sometimes people need someone to believe in them. You can do it too. And I'll always be here to help if you need it." Even though my family had never really understood me, I felt something change inside me when I looked at Elizabeth. She is a part of me, and maybe this time I can do something different, not to save her, but to help her find herself, just like I did. Finally, a big opportunity came my way when Caden, my investment partner, proposed a large partnership deal. This is not only an opportunity to grow my career, but also an opportunity for me to truly contribute to a long-term strategy for female founders. Caden has always believed in me, not only because of my ability to work, but also because I chose the right path, the path of helping deserving people. We signed a partnership contract, a big step forward in my work. Caden is not only an investment partner, but also a trusted companion. Together, we will continue to find and help visionary founders, especially women in technology. That's the path I chose, not only building a career for myself, but also building a strong community where people can help each other. And so, my journey is not just about personal success or revenge. It's also about building a sustainable future where I not only make myself stronger, but also help others. My dreams are not only about recovering myself from trauma, but also about taking the people around me along. I no longer look back. The wounds are in the past, and I have learned how to continue living the life I choose. Not because of responsibility, not because of family expectations, but because of myself. And that is the freedom I have finally found.